Ready, People's Cat. Botulism. This has come up because Rob Painless is doing a pretty good challenge, an interesting challenge about would you eat expired food, and I'm a little concerned. Being a registered nurse, it might get a bit out of hand. Botulism is extremely rare, and I'll go into why, and I'll also go into how you can prevent it, and sort of how you might try and treat it in great down. But first off, I just want to say to those people who are eating condemned meat, otherwise known as cat and dog food, please fry it for about at least 5 to 10 minutes before you eat it. Eating raw condemned meat is asking for C. difficile and a whole bunch of other infections. Simply put, it's far too risky. Even in SHDF, if I was forced to eat dog meat, which is unlikely, but if I was, I'm going to fry it, heat it thoroughly in a pan for 5 to 10 minutes before I actually ingest raw meat, whether the can's expired or not. Anyway, lesson over, but seriously, think about it. A lot of people die every year in the States from fecal contamination of human meat. Think about it. Think about where that meat's coming from in the tins. Anyway, so botulism. The best thing to do with botulism is not to get it. So the advice is always, when in doubt, throw it out. This has led to the trick of having Best By dates. After the Best By date, the company won't guarantee that the colour, freshness, taste, vitamin content is the same as when it was canned. What this does is it allows people to throw vast amounts of food out that they could otherwise eat and would be perfectly happy eating and perfectly safe eating, and then they have to buy more product, more profit. Heinz 57 tomato ketchup. It's really hard to get the last part out of the bottle. That's all profit for that company. They've sold you that, you paid for it, you can't use it, you have to buy more. So that's kind of where Best By dates come from. So Best By dates kind of rubbish. What you really probably should be doing is thinking about pantry rotation, what types of food you're stocking, stuff like that. But let's get back a bit to botulism. So, if in doubt, don't eat it. Now bear in mind, with botulism specifically, it may look, smell and taste fine and will still kill you. You cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, you cannot look at the food from the tin and make a decision about whether there's botulism neurotoxin in it or not. So because of that, if the container is leaking, bulging or swollen, that's a definite never use, even in grid down. Definitely don't use. If the container looks damaged, cracked or abnormal, I don't think I'm going to use it in grid down. If I open a container and it spurts liquid out at me or foams when opened, even if it smells and looks fine, I'm not going to use it. If the food is discoloured, mouldy or smells bad, if I'm very hungry, I'm going to scrape the mould off and heat it, boil it, fry it for a good 10 minutes because frankly I'm hungry and I'll eat almost anything that won't actually make me sicker and therefore not help me. Home canning is the most common way people get it in North America. I think it's like less than 200 cases a year. So botulism is very rare. The problem with botulism is that it's pretty fatal, so you don't really want it. Now botulism is a disease caused by exposure to the neurotoxin released by the C. difficile botulism spores when they're with food in an anaerobic non-oxygen environment. The spores themselves are completely fine. Don't worry too much about the spores. Worry about other things, the spores, bacteria all around us. The spores can be issue-ish with certain types later on, but we'll get into that. So how do you want to stop yourself getting botulism? Well, all your food should be treated to 120 centigrade if you're canning it, no question. And use an autoclave or pressure cooker for at least 30 minutes. However, that kills the spores, so if you're canning, you want to make sure there's no spores in the food because no oxygen in the mason jar over time will produce neurotoxin. But if you've just got a tin of baked beans from the supermarket that you found on the floor under the aisle that's a little dented, but not rusted, not bulging, doesn't have any of the do not use techniques, what are you going to do? It might be, so there might have been spores left over from the canning process, unlikely for commercial canning, but there might have been. They might have got into an area you can't see. It's easy, you just boil it for 10 minutes. So in grid down, all tins that are expired or in any way look suspect or may have been suspect, this includes being in your car, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold in certain parts of the world like mine, where 90 centigrade shift in temperature is common. Boil them, fry them for about 5 to 10 minutes. Basically, they say 10 minutes, I think 10 minutes is reasonable, because that will deactivate the toxin, and it's the toxin that does you in. Now, Joe Primal did a really good short video on botulism, again spurred by Rob's great challenge. And he points out that if you're canning, just put them through the canning process twice before eating. That's a good idea, it's a good tip. A bit of overkill, but if you've got meat, roadkill meat or meat like that, or you are canning in a grid down where you haven't got the same ability to control the canning process, what an excellent idea. Can it, store it, re-can it before you do it. The problem with that method is that if you haven't killed the spores in the first place by your being bad canner, or having bad luck, you need to boil that for at least 10 minutes because there may be a ton of neurotoxin in the can. If you don't really heat it all the way through, not just the outsides, for 10 minutes above boiling, you may well get neurotoxin issues. Alright, so basically what happens is about 4 to 8 hours to 8 days after ingestion, you will start to feel numbness here and here and on your tongue, and that paralysis will spread down the body. What will kill you in severe exposure is failure of respiratory muscles. The bad news is there will be no loss of consciousness at all at any time, so you will literally feel yourself basically suffocating to death, but your muscles will be too weak to struggle for it. So that's why you don't really want it. The other problem with botulism is that right now it kills 5 to 10% of everybody that get it, and we have an antitoxin available, and we have ventilators available, we have intensive cares available, and a lot of people that get it and survive spend weeks to months in intensive care and need lots of therapy afterwards. I did incorrectly say it directly causes renal failure. It does not. I was thinking of C. difficile actually, which is what I was worried about when people were eating dog food. But a lot of the issues like pressure ulcers and kidney failure actually will result from the prolonged paralysis. So even if you're able to breathe, which is unlikely with severe paralysis, you're likely to get renal failure and other issues. You just don't want it. Now what you may or may not know is there is actually a vaccine to botulism, but it has so many side effects it's only used for certain people, like poor army soldiers going into weapons of mass destruction areas in Iraq. Just shove it in them and see what happens, along with a whole bunch of other vaccines, and they all interact and they have problems. So typically, unless you work in the Botox industry, you're not going to get access to that. Now, usually it's 12 to 36 hours before exposure from food-borne botulism, because that's what I'm talking about here. Now, one of the things you must understand about it is that, Clostridium botulism, the spore, is everywhere. It's in the seas, it's in the rivers, and it's in the soil. It's natural. It only becomes dangerous to humans when it's allowed to reproduce, when there's no oxygen out there. So that's why canning in tins is a real problem. It won't grow in acidic conditions, so your pickles, especially salted pickles kept in a cool environment, they're probably really safe. Now if your pickles have been left out unattended for a long time and weren't washed properly, if the neurotoxin grew on the pickles and if the canning temperature is not high enough for long enough, 10 minutes minimum, you might still get botulism from pickles. So that's one of the things people don't know. Pickled eggs, pickled pickles, pickled sausages, whatever you pickle, I don't pickle. You do need to make sure the canning process is as rigorous as any other type. Now, Cooking Preparedness 101 wanted me to list the 10 foods that you will get from most likely to cause botulism. Shush there! I'm not doing that because frankly 10 top 10 lists are really daft, and you can get this from any foods at all. So that's the message to take home. Any tin food, any canned food is a risk for botulism. Boil it for 10 minutes before you eat it. The reason why you shouldn't be opening bulging, rusted smelling, obviously damaged cans is that you might be able to open it and inhale botulism, but we'll get into that. It's really rare, but it's possible. Now, the ones that are the low acidic vegetables, the low acidic foods are the most likely to allow C. botulism spores to reproduce if not canned properly. So they can include such things as green beans, spinach, mushrooms, beets, fish, including canned tuna. So anybody out there, I don't check today, but if anybody's eating uncooked cat food, fry it for 10 minutes. Fermented, salted and smoked fish. Again, silver foil packets of salmon, stuff like that. Check them out. Is the packet intact? Is the expiry date not too long? If in doubt at all, in grit down, boil it, fry it for 10 minutes, making sure that every part of it is hot for that length of time, killing neurotoxin. Meat products such as ham and sausage. Yes, well, Vienna sausages. Anyway, it says it's culturally Pacific, and one of the other things I think you should know, asparagus is also implicated, and so is corn. Tin corn is a common staple that a lot of preppers have, so make sure you boil it for 10 minutes after you open it. Garlic is also been associated in the oils and stuff like that. So if you make your own garlic oils, if you make your own spice oils and store them, add in at least 1 to 2 tablespoons per cup of oil. Makes it acidic, the C. botulism won't reproduce. Now, baked potatoes handled wrongly have been known to cause this. Fermented fish, canned fish, so be careful with this stuff. So to get rid of the toxin, the minimum temperature is to boil it for 5 minutes or longer at 85 centigrade. So basically on a wood stove, getting it up to roiling boil for 2 minutes and then letting it cool down probably will prevent any form of botulism from foodborne happening to you. Now, infants will get botulism. In grit down they will die. Usually, typically under the age of 6, they actually directly ingest it from their food, and the barriers that are normal in the human body can't fight it, and they get botulism and they die. It's usually a slower progression, and they have slightly different symptoms. I wouldn't worry about the symptoms. The kid's dead if they get that in SHTF. If you've got HIV or even compromised chemotherapy, you might get botulism that way as well, though it's unlikely. Again, this is going to be pretty rare. One of the things you might want to consider is wound botulism. Now, wound botulism, like, this is why you don't want to open obviously contaminated possible tins. That may take up to 2 weeks. It's common right now with heroin addiction in North America. It gets in there, and it's basically the same as foodborne botulism. It takes longer to occur. The one that's really fascinating is inhalation botulism, which is vaguely possible from a tin if you open it. The big concern about that is actually bioterrorism. It takes very, very little toxin spread around and put in food to actually kill vast numbers of people. It would completely, even if you only affected 100 people or 200 people in a city, it would completely overwhelm the intensive care facilities in that city. So it's actually kind of an easy one to produce, risky for terrorists, but it would cause terrible, terrible problem. And you can make it inhalation format and do it that way. It takes about 1 to 3 days before the symptoms come from that. Basically it's the same symptoms, but it will be a much faster respiratory failure because that's where the bugs are actually growing and releasing the toxin. If you do think it's airborne, standard precautions: remove clothes, wash, seal the clothes, decontaminate, don't get it yourself. They say waterborne botulism might happen, but they don't know about it. Theoretically, the spores could reproduce in water and then spread to humans. They say it doesn't happen anymore because of bleaching in water. So in grit down, if you're running out of bleach, take some extra care if you've got infants, young kids. You should anyway. If you can't use bleach to treat all water for everybody in your party, make sure that the youngest get the bleached water. Botox, you will not get this from Botox. Though you should not be having Botox. Men and women, you are beautiful as you age, you do not need Botox. Diagnosis can be confused with various other neuromuscular disorders which will kill you in grit down, so there's no point trying to figure it out. The question you have at this point should be, Hooples, how do I treat this? How do I treat it if I suspect this in grit down? Yeah, do what they do on the movies, like dash to a hospital, fighting off the zombies and find the last vial of the antitoxin. The only thing you can do is supportive therapy, rest, good positioning, keeping the airway clear, keeping them hydrated but not letting them inhale the water. We're getting into high-end ICU nursing at this point. The one thing that you might want to do, say you open a tin of pedigree chomp and it looked fine, and after 4 or 5 hours various members of the party start to show severe signs of foodborne issues, you might consider inducing vomiting and or treating by enemas. I would do both. An enema is just a little rubber tube put in the person lying on the left side with the legs gently up, not pushed in too far or too aggressively, and you could run in 2 litres of sterile or clean salt water solution. Just leave it for a while and let it run out. And Ipecac is a good one to have in your stocks. So yeah, so don't get it. It can kill you, and it's more common than you might realise because it's everywhere. The fact is that the human being has developed in the environment we're in to not actually catch botulism. It is pretty rare for us to get it. It's hard for us to get it. When we interfere with the normal cycle and we start canning things, which is not a normally occurring thing in the wild, that's when we put ourselves at risk. So my message is, do not eat rusted tin cans or bulging cans at all, ever, for any reason. If you've got rusted tin cans and the inside of the can is intact and you are absolutely starving, go ahead but boil it, fry it for 10 minutes. In grid down, boil, fry any expired tins for at least 10 minutes. Consider boiling and frying all tinned products in grid down for 10 minutes. That's my message. It's really, really rare. What is not rare is C. difficile and other infections, and they're what's going to kill people en masse. But at the same time, what do you think's in dog food? What do you think's in cat food? Where do you think it came from? Please aggressively cook dog and cat food if you're going to eat it. Dogs have different digestive tracts than us. There is some links in the description for a couple of sites you could look at. That's them if you just want to have a look now. Au revoir, stay safe, don't take unnecessary risks, don't die of hunger. It's a balance. Au revoir.